Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time we're going to begin the funeral service of S. Howard Reese. I never even knew that there was an S, but Howard Reese. We welcome those of you who are online. Those of you who are here, please take a moment to be sure that your cell phones have been turned off. Dr. Mark Slutsky and Cantor David Landau will be officiating. The Kriya ceremony has already taken place. At this time, we're going to begin the sacred funeral ceremony.
Without doubt, the first and the most important thing that Howard would want me to say is that for 25 years, he fought non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and in the end, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma did not win. Like Jacob, when the morning sun came, both sides were scarred and both sides carried wounds from the battle. But there was a triumph of spirit and a triumph that continued to live, to go on, and to fight as long as was humanly possible. Howard was extraordinary in the way he affected each of us. Maybe it wasn't the uniqueness of his ideas, but it was certainly the uniqueness of the spirit, the force of the arguments, the determination, the drive, the spirit of the warrior, the fighter, the advocate, the salesman that marked every interaction with Howard. Every minute of thinking about this led to one moment and another, one memory and another of times when Howard was there and his presence transformed the situation. Whether it was the kids teaching them about slavery by showing them what it was like to build and make bricks, whether it was spending Yom Kippur Eves after the services looking over how the Appeal did to see whether we were in business for another year, whether it was on trips to Israel where he wanted to get one more experience in, meet one more group of people, do one more thing, whether it was knowing that anybody who came into Aitz Hayim would immediately be met, be greeted, be included, be introduced, and be involved, because Howard could not let a moment go by without including someone. His is a story of determination that began, well, maybe there was one story told. One day, for whatever reason, because I always thought Howard was always thin, he remembers that his father called him the Crisco Kid, fat in the can. And that led to Howard working out, determined to be strong physically and be in shape in every way that he lived, whether it be outward bound trips and survival trips with Tom Brown, whether it being among the first to be a part of Multiplex, whether it be making sure that he just didn't do a sit-up or two, but he did 100 of them. Everything Howard did was to demonstrate determination and strength. And yet, Howard didn't have a pride. I thought about it. Many people struggle with whether they'll get a hearing aid or not when they need it. But it was important to Howard not to fight that, but to get that hearing aid so he wouldn't miss out in one part of the world, that he could be included and participate in everything he did. And I think each one of us understands that there's something in his life that has already connected us, and that in the weeks and months and years ahead, we'll find moments of experiences where the words he said, the way he phrased things, the involvements he had, the participation he had, the fullness of everything he did will be something that will push us to just go a little farther. In a sense, that's the summary of the spirit of Howard. That's the Howard that each one of us remembers. Traditionally, funerals begin with the 23rd Psalm. And sometimes it's a stretch to ask, what does it mean for this person that the Lord is my shepherd? But in Howard's life, the words of the Psalm, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. That's what Howard did. He comforted himself, he comforted others, and others then were able to comfort him. Whether it be the changes in his life, whether it be the growth in his life, whether it be the accomplishments of his life, these stories and these experiences will become part of us. But I want us to take, when David chants the Psalm, the 23rd Psalm, I want us all to either listen to the words, listen to the music, or else think about that moment when you connected with Howard, when there was something about his love of life, something about his commitment, his connection, his desire to convince you that black could be white if you saw it from the right perspective. Think about all of those moments when somehow you never quite knew where the idea came from, but it was strong, it was involving, it was engaging, and it was loving. So engage yourself in those thoughts as David leads us in the Psalm.
מזמור לדוד, אדוני רואי לו החסר, בינות דשא ירביצני, עמי מנוחות ינחלני, נפשי ישובב, נפשי ישובב, ינחני ומעגלי צדק למען שמו. גם כי אלך בגיא צל מוות, לא אירא רע, כי אתה עמדי, שבטך ומשענתך, שבטך ומשענתך, המה ינחמוני, תערוך לפני שולחן נגד צורריי, תשענת ושמן ראשי, כוסי רוויה, אך טוב וחסר ירדפוני כל ימי חיי, ושבתי בבית אדוני, ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים. יאללה די די, יאללה די 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 די, יאללה די 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 די, יאללה די די, יאללה די די, יאללה די די די.
It's become a cliche to use the words of the poem and prayer of Rabbi Jack Reamer to say, as long as we live, he shall live, because he is now a part of us as we remember him. But for Howard, that was no cliche, because he and Jack Reamer were friends. Not only when Jack was at Aitz Hayim, but in Boca, where they saw each other, prayed together, socialized together, and it was an attitude and an effect that mattered so much. For Howard, it was true. The stories you tell and the way you incorporate the relationships with people in your own memories and in your own channeling and embodying and imprinting what you get from other people was the essence of growth and learning. And so we'll begin this process that begins today, continues through the Shiva, and goes through life with the sharing of stories, memories, and the description of Howard. Hopefully, if we can cue up his grandson, Noah, who's in Utah, on the screen, we can.
Good. All right, I'll take that as a yes. Hey guys, I'm Noah. I'm really grateful that I was able to have the relationship I did with my grandpa. Oh geez, he was a great man. He was intelligent and caring, and even though he didn't always show it, he was very loving. His jokes weren't always the funniest, but I remember having great conversations with him, and he taught me a lot about how I should live, and I just learned a lot of life lessons from him. I'll miss you a lot, and I'll always love you. That's all.
That's my brother. I really don't have anything written out. I actually have a cocktail napkin with some notes on it. It's a lot harder than I thought it would be. I remember when I'd have to give like reports or speeches. One thing that Howard always told me when we were kids, he says, look, you have to tell them what you're going to tell them. Then you tell them, and then you tell them what you told them. We all know that, but that's what Howard told me to begin with. And I've always cherished that, because he was so wise. So here we go. Warrior, phone call. We knew a guy. CCC. The wall. Just ask. I remember Howard, to me, as it was mentioned, he was a warrior. He was a warrior not just in the militaristic fighting sense. I mean, we did judo together, he wrestled, you all know that. But he was a warrior who fought for his clan and for his greater community, for everyone. I got a call on March 27th. Hello, Jim? Hello. It's Howard. How you doing? How's the kids? How's Susie? Oh yeah, she's playing golf and the kids are doing fine. How are you? What can I do for you? He says, well, I have something to tell you. They noticed some spots on my liver and it turns out I have liver sarcoma. I said, okay, what do you need from me? You need blood, you need my platelets, you need half my liver, whatever it is, you got it. He said, well, I really appreciate that, but quite frankly, it's not going to help me at this point. Okay? Well, what's the story? Well, it's terminal. I said, Howard, terminal. You just went through 25 years ago, they diagnosed you with non-hodgkin lymphoma. They gave you less than 5 years, and here you are. So, you know, everybody knows that everybody outlives their father. All right, I made that up. But, which he would do. So I said to him, look, you got 8 years, 6 years, 10 years before anything happens, and think of what can happen in the medical field that was going to change all this. He said, no, I don't have that. I don't have years, I have months, maybe weeks. He said, look, we sent all of our information, all that we could, up to Mayo. They're going to look it over, get back to me. They'll get it back next week. I'll give you a call. I remember when we were kids, we knew a guy. We all know guys. But we knew a guy that we respected, highly respected, and loved, cherished, and really believed in. And he told us that if you want to be successful in life, you want to be successful at your job, successful at anything, you had to have the 3 C's. The 3 C's. First, Howard was really, really smart. He knew a lot of things about a lot of different topics. And if he didn't know, he would research it. I mean, let's face it, with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, he went to his doctors and he would sit down with them and they'd say, well, here's what we're going to do. And he'd listen, because he was a good listener, right? A very good listener. And he would finish listening and then he'd say, well, hold on a minute. I've been doing some reading and I've studied this and I know what's coming out, and what about A, B, or C? And before you knew it, they had a conversation about where we were going to go and how they were going to treat him with Howard's input. And generally, he changed their minds, right? Did that all the time. It just shows the amount of competence that Howard had in everything that he was doing. You went to Howard because he was competent. He was competent and knew it, and you had to have that first C in order to succeed. Nothing basically got in his way. Nothing. I remember the wall. The wall. When Howard and Susan were first married, early on, I don't remember all the details, they were living in an apartment, and Howard had to separate this big room, and he needed to put up a wall. I mean, we're talking about Howard. At that point in time, he couldn't screw in a light bulb. But he did his research. He went online, which of course didn't have it back then, but he did his research, and he found out how to build a wall, and he built a wall, and I'm worried about the thing falling down, right? But he built it with 16-inch on-center studs, did it right, and he built the wall. Everybody has walls in their lives, and Howard always figured out a way to go around that wall, or open the door in the wall, or somehow avoid that wall. That's who Howard was. And he had that confidence in everything that he did, because it was all based on his competence, his knowledge, and the fact that he knew he could do it. Howard could do it. And when there was a wall there, he had the courage to somehow figure out how I'm going to avoid that obstacle, that wall. And if he didn't know where he was going, he had the courage to say, I'm going to do it anyways. I might be afraid, not too afraid, because he had the courage to say, I'm going to move forward. That was the third C. He had the competence, the confidence, and the courage. That was his character. That was his character. Remember, Howard was a warrior. He was always there for his clan, always there for his greater community, wherever that was. He was really there for each of you in your own way. Remember Howard as that warrior. All you had to do was ask. His life and his name is a blessing. That's my brother.
His daughter, Zoe.
Hi. I know we're here to celebrate and acknowledge my father, but I just want to acknowledge 3 other people first. I want to acknowledge my brother Barry, who isn't here right now, but I know he's listening, and I don't know where I look to acknowledge him, but thank you for being in our family. Thank you for finding us and making that effort to bring so much more to our clan. Thank you for being a phenomenal Reese. And you have blessed us so much. Thank you. I also want to acknowledge Noah. This is hard for him not to be here. Very hard, but I'm glad he's not. He's at college right now, and it's a crazy week. And his godmom, one of my dearest friends, Donna, flew in to sit with him through this ceremony, and they are watching this, I think, from his dorm room. So thank you, Donna. Thank you, Noah. Noah, you are such a light, and you brought so much light to my dad's life. It was like insane. It was insane. Also, I want to thank my brother. For years, I have worshipped him as any younger sibling worships their brother. And for years, I have admired him. And I think he knows it. I try to make it clear. I've been so impressed with how he has handled this. This happened at a bizarrely lightning fast speed, my father's death. And we had all grown rather cavalier about him ever dying. And so when he made that call to us, I think, like Jimmy mentioned, I think we were all kind of like, yup. It's, I was looking up the word sarcoma, and it didn't look nice, but neither did lymphoma. And so I don't think any of us realized quite what we were dealing with. And Rob, you have dealt with it just so beautifully, and I wish I could give you more. I gave you a women's college that you could visit when you were younger, but other than that, I don't really know. I just am so grateful to you and for the calmness that you have brought our family, and how you have just simply done what needs to be done. And as bizarre as it sounds, I truly enjoyed spending the night with you and sitting there as my father died and just talking to you. It was a strange gift that my dad gave us, although we do talk often. So Anyway, thank you. Thank you. Anyway, this is how I want to remember my dad. He was the original dystopian zombie apocalypse survivor. And he blended this with a healthy respect of Native American and Eastern philosophy, along with his Jewish faith. Do y'all know what I mean? I'm like, I don't know how much I'm supposed to explain this, because I think everyone gets it. Prepared for Disaster, literally, by Tom Brown's Native American survival courses. My dad could make a lean-to and live off the land if necessary. He had a medicine bag with his spirit animal eagle feather in it throughout my childhood by his bedside stand, along with the Tao of Pooh book. And this brought him, I think, a quiet comfort throughout the craziness of life. Forever managing pain, he was into alternative medicine before it was cool. He saw a naturopath, Rosalie Guzmano, for years. This was a name always in our house. He wore a Lenox Hill brace and recounted knee surgeries on several fingers. He discussed his wildly windy spine with almost a hint of pride, although it never stopped causing him pain. He used to say it ended up in his back pocket. My dad inspired me to run, and I still do. He was at the multiplex lifting weights and doing chin-ups when it was in a basement. He worked out my entire life, and his exercise and vitamin regimen were recited with the intensity of a prayer to anyone who would listen. In fact, we were often almost missing planes because he was still at the health club finishing his workouts. He was the untrendy trendsetter. He was taking fish oil and drinking smoothies before True Juice and supplement stores were a concept. He was into rock climbing and biking before the national craze when I was just a child. I saw carabiners and colnagos, knee braces, fingerless gloves, shiny black biking shorts with chamois all over the house. His never-ending collection of athletic aids, exercise regimens, and helpful devices kept his pain at bay and provided him with an athletic focus that shaped all of his days. Modest and frugal, the best fashion was a pair of jeans on sale that were decades old. He would gladly tell you the price. And it wasn't $200, right? Howard would not wear a label because they hadn't paid him for free advertising. Chivalrous and polite, my father kept the wheel wagon water from splashing on me my entire life. He always said, "You must know your manners so you can decide if you want to use them or not." The table in our family of origin was always set correctly, and elbows were not allowed on the table. Handsome to a fault. It was agreed that my father looked like Magnum PI's double. Tom Selleck, right? When planning a play date as a child, much value was added if he might make an appearance on the home front. Hardworking to a fault, my father said he could sleep when he was dead. If there was a Jewish board with lots of letters, he was proudly on it. He had great respect for the CJE, Hillel, JUF, CJE, and I'm probably missing some. My father embraced Aitz Hayim and Mark Slutsky and never looked back. He said community mattered and believed it. He gave up shrimp to be a better Jew. Which was a lot. My dad took me to New York City when I was little, and we saw two plays on Broadway, The Rink and Cats. I came home with expensive bags of Benetton sweaters and even a dress for my brother's bar mitzvah from Bergdorf Goodman's. While planning our warm weather vacation for Christmas, my parents reluctantly listened to Rob and my wishes and booked tickets for Vail. This trend lasted for years and became the destination of many warm weather family vacations. My father adored my mom and made her a priority in all of his thoughts. He treated her like the catch that she was, and always had her best wishes at heart. From Washington University to Painter's Lake, he made every decision with his right side of the track bride that he'd managed to snag in mind. Dad was proud of my brother and my accomplishments, but most of all, he adored his grandchildren. He was truly at his best when over for dinner discussing politics with my son Noah or sports with Abel. With Noah, he found his true equal in the delight of argument and discourse. Often we would all be in bed and they would still be having a great discussion. Noah could take in my dad's thoughts and even disagree with him in a way that created more love and more discussion that went on for hours. Abel plied him endlessly with questions about how things were back then. And my dad was more than happy to answer. By listening to my children, I could learn about my own father. He forever hounded me for schedules of Opal's performances and recitals so he could hobble in late in a work shirt and proceed to scan the program looking for her name with a proud intensity. He was proud of her brains and thoughtfulness and in awe of her beautiful shiksa looks. Organized and methodical, my dad often cautioned slowing down and stepping back. A good idea today will be a good idea tomorrow, he admonished. Dad was a planner and liked to have as much information as possible as he weighed the pros and cons of life's decisions. My dad lived his life with the intensity of a dying man, because he was. He also managed to outlive many in the process of this. Immunocompromised was his daily existence, and he knew that at any moment, illness could take him. A gratitude practice was not a platitude for him. It was a daily regimen. My dad was so many things to so many people. I think most of all, he inspired people to try harder and to be more honorable. Forever aware of his own mortality, he reminded me, and probably many of you, to slow down and think about how we want to be remembered and how we want our contributions to affect the world. He will be missed.
His son, Rob.
Hello, everyone. True to my father's wishes, I would like to make sure that everyone here is comfortable. Is everyone comfortable? If you're comfortable, then you're not wearing a jacket and you're not wearing a tie. You're wearing your work shirt, comfortable pair of shoes, and reliable pair of jeans. So if you are wearing a jacket now, take it off. I'm being serious. Thank you. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Yes, right there. Thank you. Everyone, feel free. To be clear, I am not as fashion forward as I appear today. I'm wearing one of Dad's, very proudly, circa 1987. So I'm Howard's son, Robert. And on behalf of the extended Reese family, I thank you for joining us today to celebrate this extraordinary man's life, Samuel Howard Reese. Since we're all family, everyone was family in Dad's eyes, I'm comfortable confiding to you that in my head I have a long, long list of achievements, big and small, that I want to share with you about Dad. He touched the life of many in his family and in the community. And this remembrance in this room today could, and by some right should, last well into the night. But interestingly, when I was required to put pen to paper to recount my father's extraordinary life story, the hurdles presented, the obstacles overcome, the achievements celebrated, I was at a loss for words. And if you know me half as well as you know my father, you know brevity and reticence are not my strong traits. But it wasn't for a lack of love or the desire to share all this man did for his family and friends and community right to the very end that proved to be the challenge. I lacked the lexicon. The words I'm looking for to honor this terrific man simply have not been invented. We all know well that when Dad walked into a room, there was a tangible shift in the energy field. the center of gravity. We all know this. Despite the arthritis, the crippling scoliosis of the back, the neck pain, the IVIG injections, the chemotherapy, despite all of it, Dad's presence lit up a room, and he was genuinely happy to see you. Dad wanted to know how you were feeling. He wanted you to be comfortable. Dad kept a list of names on the back of a business card, and he said a Misha Berach for those in the community who needed healing despite his own quiet suffering. That list of names is still in his wallet. That list does not include his own name because Dad never viewed himself as sick or dying. His health challenges were merely a reminder that he had much to do in the limited time he had left. I know it would give Dad great pleasure to see so many people here today because it would serve as a reminder that he was a positive presence in so many lives in some way. Dad's participation in the community is what made life interesting for him and sustained him, and what allowed him to triumph during tough times. Now and always, it's important to acknowledge those communities that sustained him. So in true Howard tradition, I'm going to break precedent. If you were a part of one of the communities I read, please stand up. Dad's family. If you benefited in some way from knowing Dad through Aitz Hayim, please stand up. If you benefited in some small way from knowing Dad through his many Federation endeavors, helping those in need in Chicago, Israel, and throughout the world, please stand up. If you had the pleasure of working with Dad during his many years as a member of AAA-1 Masonry and Tuckpointing, please stand up. If you knew Dad from the gym or benefited in some way from a locker room conversation with Dad, please stand up. And if you promise to keep Dad's memory alive and do good deeds in his name, even when the chips are down, please stand up. Great. In all my years, never have I seen one man do so much for so many. As Zoe and I sat with Dad and watched his remarkable, indefatigable life force fade away this Friday, shortly after the start of Shabbat, it started to snow outside his hospital window. And it seemed, at least to us, Zoe and I, that when Dad died, even God cried. You will be missed, Dad. You knocked this one out of the park, and your memory will forever be for a blessing. Amen.
It's fitting that after the love, the poignancy, the stories, it's fitting that after the love, the poignancy, the stories, that Howard should get the last word. 13 years after he was diagnosed in 1997, he celebrated the bar mitzvah of his life with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. He spoke to the community, and I found I had kept a copy of the words he spoke when he celebrated that moment. I'd like to share some of those words with you because I think they capture so much and bring it all together. It isn't easy to think about your own death. It gets bizarre when you are given a date, even if it's approximate, when they tell you the steps you will go through. I was sad. I needed more time. It couldn't happen to me. Now, 13 years later, have I been lucky? You bet I have. When I see my oncologist, Steve Rosen, at Northwestern, he looks at me and asks, "Are you Howard Reese, or are you a Dybbuk who's come back?" And when I spoke to Steve Rosen this morning and shared with him the news, he said, it is so, he remembered and sends his love, Susan, and said it was so rare for me to work with a patient for more than 20 years. And he talked about his Aitz Hayim experience. He said, he came to Aitz Hayim the first day, and he walked on, just as he had walked on to the wrestling team at Wash U. He immediately threw himself in it, and he was immediately accepted. He said, even before I was sick, I convinced Erwin and Herb and Ruthie Wander, and Mark and Barbara to lead a trip to Israel. 3 weeks after my diagnosis, I continued and went on that trip. One of many trips that he took with family, with community at that point. And then he said, and I think this is what's important, after my diagnosis, Susan and I found that we have more time than we thought we ever had before. Before, our lives seemed pretty full with our own agendas. Then after 1997, we discovered the greater community and we threw ourselves into it. He said, I was on boards, we were involved, and we made this an orienting part of our lives. I started to think also more about others. What if someone I didn't know had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and did not have access to the available doctors and medicines? Is this not my responsibility to make sure this does not happen? I have to become informed and involved so that in some reasonable way, more people have access to medical care. The political issues may be complicated, but as a Jew, I feel I'm responsible for influencing the outcome. If I am not, then I am diminished. Treating the stranger as yourself, because you were once a stranger in a strange land, takes us back to our beginning. I traveled to Washington and Springfield to lobby, and I found that that was an expression of my Jewishness. I became far more involved in American life as well. He said, our tradition says that the Messiah will come when there is reconciliation between parents and children. Since 1997, my life has had messianic fervor. I am proud that Rob has bought and is growing my company. And Howard continued to work at that, I'm adding. And Howard had a philosophy, why estimate a job from the ground looking up when you could take a ladder out of your truck and call it and climb up and see it brick by brick? He said, I'm proud that Rob did this. I'm actually at that time beginning to see making the shift in the company working for him. I'm excited and proud that my daughter Zoe has held my long-time skepticism and distrust of the ordinary. I'm a different husband to Susan. I'm a different father to Rob, to Zoe, to Barry, and a different grandfather. We celebrate my life, my 13th year of this new life, because I feel so much a part of my family now and community now. And I hope that each one of you has a capacity to grow and look at obstacles and use my story to add meaning and value to your lives, and hopefully without the traumas I've had to experience. Each personal story expresses different elements of connecting with Howard. But as I was thinking about them, perhaps there's one image of Howard that integrates so many different aspects of his life. Only Howard Reese could put an ad in the Jewish United Fund News, which shows him and Rob standing at a Herodian wall saying, "Not since King Herod has a builder built with such an eye to the future." AAA Masonry, AAA-1 Masonry and Tuckpointing. To Howard, our friend, our inspiration, our salesman, our advocate, you who advocated to us and you who advocated for us. You leave us a legacy and you give us a sense of responsibility. The only memorial prayer we have in Judaism says that the life that was lived actively by Howard, because there was nothing in Howard's life that was not active, may come to an end. But the responsibility for his well-being and peace in the heavens rests with us. So in the memorial prayer, the El Mole Rachamim, which David will chant, the key line says, with our tzedakah, with our good deeds, with our righteousness, with the gifts we give and the contributions we make, and Howard would be very specific, it's not just ideas, it's actual cash on the line. The very things that we do serve to give him the peace and the eternal rest that he deserves. Please rise for the El Mole Rachamim. Abel? There is nothing that would make this more an event that Howard would be proud of than Abel speaking.
You can be seated. I just wanted to say that, what? Sorry. I just wanted to come up here and say that Zebra, my grandpa, he was a great grandpa, and he was like a great listener, and I could always talk to him, and he always knew what to say, and he always made me happy when I did, and he always had the right answer, and I'm just gonna really miss him, and he was just a really good person, and I just want to say that I really liked him, and I'll miss him.
Emale rachamim, shochen b'meromim, hametzei menucha nechona al kanfei hashechina, במעלות קדושים וטהורים כזוהר הרקיע, מזהירים את נשמת שמואל בן משה ובאסי שהלך לעולמו, בעבור שבלי נדר ניתן צדקה ונעשה צדקה ביד הזכרת נשמתו בגן עדן נהי מנוחתו. לכן בעל הרחמים יסתירהו בסתר כנפיו לעולמים, בצרור החיים את נשמתו. אדוני הוא נחלתו וינוח בשלום על משכבו, ונאמר אמן.
Ladies and gentlemen, the interment service will continue at Memorial Park Cemetery located at 9900 Grosse Point Road here in Skokie. The family will be returning to the Reese residence at 2100 Painters Lake Road in Highland Park. They'll be together today following the interment till 9 p.m., Tuesday from 2 to 4, and then 6 to 8 p.m. Memorial contributions to the Aitz Hayim Center for Jewish Living would be appreciated. For those of you who are here, all that information is on the service folder. For those of you, the many of you that are joining us online, all that information is on the website. For those of you who will be driving in the funeral procession to the cemetery, the procession will be forming in our parking lot. Please obtain an orange safety funeral sticker to place on the right-hand side of your windshield. Have your bright lights and hazard lights on at all times. For additional measures of safety, please have your high beam and your hazard lights on. Please use your horn liberally as you're going through the intersections. And and please do not text on your cellular phone while driving to the cemetery. Excuse me 1 second. Rob had an important concept, but it's already been taken care of. I'm going to go a little bit off script, if you don't mind, in keeping with Howard. At the cemetery, what we're going to do is we're going to lower his casket immediately, and everyone will have an opportunity to place earth in. We will not continue the service until this grave is hand-filled by all of us. Please don't feel pressure, even if you can do a little by hand, but we are not doing anything without this grave being full, and we can all imagine how we're doing it for the many, many years. Please don't approach the family, and what we're going to do is after they walk through the shura, the double aisle, that's when you may offer words of consolation. So please don't walk up to the family and talk about Howard until the service is completely over and Cantor Landau reads the Hamakom. At this time, I'd like to ask everyone to rise and stand in place. For the immediate mourners that are wearing the ribbon, we're going to take you into the family room, but for all the other family, I'd like you to be pallbearers for Howard. Also, for any of the clergy that have ever been at Aitz Hayim, and professional teachers, executive director, also serve as an honorary pallbearer, because I just think Howard would like it. So at this time, if we could have the family members that are not wearing the career ribbons to come forward to Howard's casket, any of the clergy that served at Aitz Hayim or executive director, please come forward as we escort Howard's casket to the hearse, and then everyone can go to their cars. Okay? You're just going to follow Bill. And Bill was the guy who helped Howard honors his CFG. There's a lot of symbolism. Here, yours? You're going to follow Bill. Everybody's going to follow Bill. Okay, so you're going to say, Please come this way. Ladies and gentlemen, you may return to your cars. Come this way. Folks, please come this way.